I'm one of those fanatic fanboys who can never get enough of Terminator content. Right from the iconic movies to some disappointing entries in the franchise, nothing has slipped my attention. But what really impresses me is the extensive comic book lore that goes relatively unnoticed and underrated. Today, I will explore one such comic series that marks the dark fate of John Connor in a distant future ruled over by Skynet. Just so you have a good context of the timeline of this comic series, it came out in 1990, and the publisher, Now Comics, or the creative team, had no idea that James Cameron was working on a sequel to the iconic 1984 classic film. Thus, the real intent for this comic series was to give the fans a movie-like sequel, and I'll have to say that the creative team has done a wonderful job with this one. The story is set in a future timeline of 2029, and the protagonist is John Connor and his ragtag team of resistance soldiers who are continuing a fight against overwhelming odds as Skynet has taken over. The series was set up as the final end to the Now Comics Terminator series, and it's a conclusion worth sitting for. For me, the highlight of the series is that it's the first ever published work of Alex Ross, who has since then become an iconic figure in the comic book industry. The real-looking artwork is hard to miss, and some of the sequences in the comic series hit hard. Well, I think I've teased you just about enough, and it's time for the real deal as I delve into the details of a gripping story that marks one of the most memorable Terminator storylines ever. The first chapter is titled Welcome to Hell, and I don't think there could have been a more appropriate title for this. I mean, here we are in the middle of a resistance movement against Skynet that's honestly going nowhere aside from minor victories and skirmishes. The comic series opens with a picture of a dark and grim apocalyptic wasteland, where one of the rebels suggests that it has been raining for 2 weeks straight, and he wonders, if hell was supposed to be warm, why is it gray and wet here? The conversation between the resistance fighters reveals that the war has been raging for 4 decades now, and it's been going on so relentlessly that nobody even remembers what year it's supposed to be. As for the fighters, they just move on from one battle to another, and there's a sense of despair that immediately catches up with me as a reader. At the same time, you also get the feeling that the resistance fighters are still not giving up because somewhere they still have the hope for an unlikely win over the robotic dominance. A team of resistance fighters in an armed van take on a column of Skynet drones, but someone says that it's only a trap. Basically, there's no destroying these permanently because shooting down every one of these drones makes Skynet send 2 more at the fighters. As the fighters try to shoot at the drones, it's further revealed that Skynet has amped up the annihilation campaign in the last few months. There is a horrifying picture of the kind of oppression that Skynet resorts to, such as poison gas. It's really disturbing when I see the effects of the gas on the individuals, and soldiers of the resistance die the most painful deaths ever when exposed to the gas. But the survivors still continue to fight, because they've been fighting for far too long to just give up at this point. I find the sense of bonhomie rather adorable because the fighters have a sense of brotherhood that makes them united for the cause. They fight for each other and don't shy away from putting their lives on the line if required. And soon, we're left to witness one such moment as the van flips over while attempting to flee after bursting a couple of Skynet tanks. The fighters make a run for their lives, and this is the first time we actually see John Connor. Now, he is a shadow of the spirited young man who believes in the cause. There's a sense of disappointment and frustration that's quite evident, and he wonders if it would be worth resting for some time instead of waging this futile war. But I'm wondering what would be the impact for the movement if the leader gets into such a pessimistic state. The good thing is that a tragedy shakes away his sense of doom. One of the resistance fighters fleeing from the scene gets her leg caught up in a trap. Her fellow comrade stands by her even as the Skynet tanks close in, and Connor is inspired by the sacrifice even when it's obvious that standing by her means certain death. Watching this makes Connor question his earlier pessimism, and he makes a solemn promise to never give up. He swears that the resistance would never stop coming for Skynet. But inspiration alone doesn't win you wars, does it? The Skynet forces are overwhelming in terms of technology and superiority in numbers, and the resistance has to resort to guerrilla warfare tactics and run from the scene when the situation so demands. For instance, the other resistance fighters go as far away from the battleground as they can, and they scatter to regroup later so that they don't become easy targets for the robotic forces. Meanwhile, Skynet unleashes its jackals, which the fighters call the puppets of horror. These have been described as a steel-plated Frankenstein copy of man, and while one could think of this as a perfect duplicate, Skynet has eliminated the major weakness of man in these robots. They are not sensitive or bound by morals, and the first issue ends with the shocking sight of an injured resistance fighter mercilessly killed by one of these robots even as she pleads for help. Clearly, Skynet doesn't care about war crimes. One of the things that really strikes me about the first chapter of the comic series is how the artwork and the narrative blends perfectly to create a sense of desperation. I'm almost panicking about the fate of the Resistance as the full might of Skynet is on display. Also, the best of Skynet is yet to come, which I discover soon enough as I head into Chapter 2, titled A Better Mousetrap. This time around, things start off with a quick glimpse of Skynet's perspective. It's revealed how Skynet was created by the Technodyne Corporation, and ironically enough, there was a time when the purpose of this creation was global nuclear defense. Maybe they're just doing that with their sense of dominance and ruling over everything human, but that doesn't bode well for the survivors who are a part of the Resistance. The next sequence is easily one of my favorite introductions of a Terminator. A group of Resistance fighters are kept in a holding cell, and they plan on how they wouldn't let anyone get to them without a fight. They hear someone coming, and suddenly a confident, alluring woman walks in. She is dressed in leather tights and a biker jacket, and she has sunglasses that add to her charm as she stands before them and introduces herself as Aurora. By the time the three Resistance soldiers realize that she's actually a Terminator, it's a little too late. I'm absolutely shocked by the way she deals with the three people. Yes, they do try to put up a fight, but it's as useless as a toddler trying to fight a UFC champion. Aurora decimates them almost sadistically, and her last kill in particular is the most disturbing one, where she bites off the face of a male Resistance member. Then we get a chilling perspective of Skynet as it talks about how the Prime Directive that once created the system is now invalid. It logically infers that there is no reason to protect a species that is so bent on self-destruction. Since it's not possible to execute, the internal circuits of Skynet have realigned and it's destroyed 96.3% of humanity. The remaining 3.7% is evidence of faulty programming, and there's a sinister plan in the making, which can realistically destroy humanity entirely. There's a fascinating sequence in this part of the narrative where it's revealed that the nuclear stockpile has been increased sufficiently to be airily deployed, and the probability of humans being completely eliminated by this is 100%. I can already tell that the moment is near when it will be a now or never scenario for John Connor and his men. If they don't act fast enough, they won't have a chance to act at all. Meanwhile, back to the battleground scenario, a Resistance fighter pulls off a smart move to take down several of the Skynet robots. He straps an explosive to himself and lures the robots close before detonating the explosive. Another Resistance fighter watches through binoculars from a distance, and he remarks how the sacrifice of the fighter wasn't in vain. A young lady named Sasha comes and informs him that Connor wants him for a strategy meeting, and he's happy to know that they are finally coming up with a plan that doesn't involve running away to safety. I love the cowboy look of this gritty rebel fighter, and I have a feeling that he will have a major role to play going ahead. Even Sasha is a fierce young lady, and the man named Miguel is quite pessimistic about the chances of the Resistance at the moment. But he has a different way of seeing this, and he believes that since there is no chance of them living, there is no reason to worry about anything as well. Finally, Sasha and Miguel reach Connor, who tells them that he has been studying the old road maps along with Jerry. He has decided on the next destination, which is going to be Thunder Mountain, the Skynet headquarters. I immediately know that this is going to be one huge mission, and even Miguel is happy to have a chance to do something decisive instead of sitting around and fleeing from Skynet robots. The next bit is one of the most hard-hitting sequences that shows the true signs of stress and constant battle on the Resistance fighters, especially their leader, Connor. They have an injured comrade among them, and the doctor can do nothing because they've run out of supplies. The young fellow is in agonizing pain, and the doctor reveals that they can only watch him die helplessly. In a shocking moment of extreme decisiveness, Connor just pulls out his gun and shoots him in the head. It's a logical decision, yes, but it's one that lacks humanity without a doubt. John prevents him from suffering for a long time, but his act raises questions among other Resistance fighters who wonder if they are fighting so hard only to lose their humanity in the process. But as of now, Connor has become this hardened soldier who would stop at absolutely nothing for a complete victory. And because I know what Skynet's up to, I can tell it's a smart move rather than wasting time on compassion and sentiments. It still sounds bad though when he says that there's no time to bury the deceased soldier and they must move on immediately. Suddenly, they spot hordes of the hunter-killer drones overhead, and everyone ducks for cover. Patch and Jerry are ordered to man the cannons, but things take an unexpected turn when they realize that all those drones are not really after them. But where are they headed then, and why? The Resistance fighters soon find the answers when one of them looks through field glasses and spots something strapped on to the flying death machines. Yes, they are armed with nuclear bombs, and the haunting realization dawns on everyone. Skynet is now tired of destroying humanity bit by bit, and they have enough nukes up there to finish everything today. Connor stays true to his nature as a defiant leader and calls out to his people to head for Thunder Mountain because they don't have any time. If Skynet has played its trump card, the Resistance must use theirs, and then it will be a now or never moment. With this crucial twist, we head into the third chapter titled King of the Mountain. The third chapter opens with an account of Connor where he talks about how his mother taught him all about Skynet and how it came to conquer the world. It took over a very secret defense installation buried in the heart of these mountains, and the main reason behind this mission is to try one last time to defeat the computer monster that's now hell-bent on saving humanity. If the mission is successful, the surviving humans might just have a chance of setting things right. As the journey begins, the drive seems rather eerie because there's no sign of opposition, even though they've been crawling up Thunder Mountain for hours now. Suddenly, a group of Terminators start shooting indiscriminately, and the seasoned Resistance fighters make sure that they destroy the immediate threats. But the danger is far from over, as they realize that Skynet knew all along that they were coming. It simply waited for them to walk right into the trap before pouncing on them all with deadly force. Miguel takes down a few drones, and Sasha fights fiercely as well, and the Resistance fighters manage to keep moving even as they encounter hordes of Skynet threats. The fight sequence here is absolutely cinematic, and it's one of those moments in the comic series that makes me wish this was turned into a movie. The mountains are burning with random explosions, and it seems like the Resistance fighters are out in two groups. While one group takes on the Terminators and other Skynet weaponry, the other group wants to hit the right spot where it might hurt Skynet. Connor had seen in old Air Force ordnance maps that a power generator complex might be the main source of energy for the CPU base. But the maps are over 50 years old, and I'm not sure how credible the information is. If he's right, however, the Resistance fighters can just knock the power generator out of commission, and that will be the end of Skynet for good. After all, as mighty as it may be, it is only a machine at the end of the day, and without a power source, it's as good as gone. As the group tries searching for this power source, one of the soldiers, named Tim, comes across a tension mine, and maybe Skynet has tried to protect the area so heavily for a reason. The journey up the rocks is not easy by any means. The rocks are slippery, and one of the soldiers, named Marissa, falls down, barely holding on. She's pulled up to safety, and this is yet another cinematic moment, if you ask me, filled with tension that serves as the prelude for what's about to come. The Terminators that try to go after them don't do so well because apparently rock climbing is not their strong suit. As one of the Resistance fighters remarks, they function better when both their feet are on the ground, but they still keep coming, and they keep falling off the cliff, which is almost a hilarious moment even in this crisis situation. I love the example one of the soldiers gives when he says that they're like fleas on a big dog's back because even though Skynet knows they're there, it can't do much in these mountainous terrains. But back at Skynet headquarters, we see hordes of Auroras and other Terminators preparing to mount a defense that the Resistance fighters would find almost impossible to overcome. Just as they reach the top of the mountain and they are close to accomplishing the mission that might change the course of the battle, the Terminator army walks out with clear instructions: destroy all hostile intruders. Miguel is in front, and I've always known him to be one of the most daring Resistance soldiers so far. With this, the third chapter comes to an end, and we're about to witness the showdown in Chapter 4, titled The Last Day. This time around, the narrative starts off with a catastrophe as Skynet hits one of the human establishments in the arid southwest. The weather there is already polluted, and the survivors have a tough time living there in the dirt. Now Skynet goes ahead with Phase 1, where the nuclear detonation takes out the entire settlement. We see the shocking images of humans melting away under the impact of the explosion as the skeletons evaporate in one of the most decisive moves from Skynet so far. I guess the robotic uprising means business, and they're running out of patience. The The next target is Phoenix, slightly southward from the first location, and a tiny hamlet of long-forgotten human survivors, once called Arizona, is evaporated. Aside from the immediate destruction caused by the nuclear explosions, it also creates tremors that send seismic waves across hundreds of miles in either direction. Is this the end of the road for the Resistance after such a long struggle? Back at Thunder Mountain, the fighters still continue to fend off the Terminators, even though someone as determined as Miguel is also hopeless by now. The fighting intensifies, but I think it's pretty one-sided with the best efforts of the Resistance soldiers. When it comes to a hand-to-hand duel with Terminators, you know the humans don't stand a chance, and yet they fight. The nuclear wind comes to their aid only slightly, distracting the Terminators just enough for Connor and some of his trusted comrades to enter the facility. The situation gets so chaotic that I had to read this bit multiple times to understand what exactly was happening. This is probably one of the flaws of the comic series, but I'll come to that later. As it turns out, Skynet has riddled the terrain with traps and difficulties so that its nerve center cannot be breached so easily. Leif and Marissa perish to mudslides triggered by the Terminators, and the survivors must be strong enough to waste no time in rescue attempts and continue with the mission, which is their only chance. Meanwhile, the main Skynet computer detects a security breach that has affected the region. Terminators are sent out to eliminate them on contact, and it's a crisis of the highest order as we enter the 5th chapter of this gripping comic series titled The Heart of Skynet. The staging area of Skynet's evil has been described as the heart of the devil, and it's a place where light doesn't reach and neither does clean air. Of course, a machine needs none of that for sustenance, and the Resistance fighters make their way through this gloomy and cold area to get to the power source that they seek so desperately. Also, it's the 5th chapter that properly reveals what Connor is after. This is Skynet's real brain, the central processing unit, and the principal computer storage facility. Meanwhile, it's also quite apparent that Skynet is observing every move of the Resistance soldiers and instructing the Terminators accordingly. Of course, you can't expect the destruction of Skynet to be so easy without any major hurdles. They find their way to the war room, and this is the place Skynet launched all the attacks from. The technology of this place has taken a hit from the shockwave of the nuclear explosions, and Connor realizes that they could do some real damage if they can shut the place down while there's still time and the system's not back to full efficiency. By now, the Terminators, that include the Aurora from earlier, track them down, and it's yet another fierce encounter between the two sides. Connor plays a cool trick, where he chucks a grenade for the Terminator to catch, and it explodes right in his face. On the other hand, Connor's allies were dealing with another challenge miles away in a small wooden valley. This is a small group of Resistance fighters who have come across the generator plant that supplies Mount Thunder and Skynet. Jerry, Sue, and a select few others realize that even the impact of the nuclear explosions did no damage to the structure, and Sue wonders what little they can do with limited resources. They don't even have the dynamite needed to get the job done, and one of the soldiers, Tim, points at something that immediately sends me down memory lane because it's a Mark 108 plasma cannon. Now, Tim cannot speak, but he does reveal his plan through signs. The generator plant is covered with rocks on top, supported only by a tiny rocky ledge. The plan is to blow away the ledge so that the rocks come crashing down and the generator plant is reduced to rubble. Time is running out fast because on the other side, Connor, Miguel, and the others are trapped as the Terminators keep coming at them. But amidst the chaos and running for their lives, they come across the CPU, the main brain behind Skynet, right in their grasp. According to Tim's plan, Jerry and Sue create a diversion, and the plasma cannon bursts into action. I love how luck syncs up for both parties because Connor gets the perfect revenge when he blasts the mainframe of Skynet CPU with bullets. Suddenly, it all comes together, and there's a peaceful silence that symbolizes the win for the Resistance. As Skynet systems are interrupted, the Terminators stand waiting for further orders that never come. The remaining drones carrying the nuclear warheads come down without detonating their charges, and the world is saved, with a perfectly happy ending coming together. But is it really over? The comic series ends with the suggestive remark that we will never truly know the answer to that. The victory for now is that there is a hopeful tomorrow for humanity, something that seemed bleak with the plans of complete destruction shown earlier. Now let me come back to my thoughts on this comic series, which is entertaining without a doubt. However, at the same time, I have to admit that some parts, especially the action sequences, feel somewhat campy and goofy at times. Do you really really expect the Terminators to keep missing when they come in hordes against the human soldiers? Also, things just fall into place for Connor and his men a bit too frequently. Yes, there are times when the narrative tries to be deep and poignant, with some emotional blows for the reader, but I don't think that you can regard this as one of the darkest or most serious Terminator stories ever. I was really disappointed to see a badass Terminator like Aurora wasted in the narrative because she hardly poses any genuine threat for Connor and his fellow soldiers. Someone rightly said that the comic series can be described as a really attractive, stupid person, and that takes nothing away from the genuinely good content that the team has delivered. Like I said before, it's a solid entertainer, and you don't mind a casual read once in a while, do you? Let me know in the comments below what you think of this gritty narrative on Connor's valiant fight, and also share your thoughts if you think this would be cool as a movie sequel. Bye for now.